policy. I'd be better off to have protection.
Let's get to phone calls.
Okay.
John is up first. Silver Spring, Maryland, Republican caller. Hi, John.
On 9/11, no plane struck the third tower, Building 7, but it came down in free fall acceleration for 105 feet in 6.5 seconds, which is impossible unless some type of explosives were used. How long do members of Congress think they can dismiss this issue and pretend that the government story of what happened to Building 7 on 9/11 is credible?
Congressman?
Well, I was expecting a healthcare question.
Yes.
There certainly are questions that I think would merit further investigation. I've seen some of the tapes, some of the videos that have been done of that, and I think there are some legitimate questions. Right now, nobody's willing to look at that kind of stuff because they're worried about future terrorism, not what went on before. And I really think one day we will have a further examination of that issue. I think the sooner the better, but that's just my personal view.
Steve, in North Carolina.
Welcome to 9/11 Freefall. This is your host, Andy Steele. Thanks for tuning in. Well, there you heard it, folks. Congressman Jim McDermott, a Democrat out of Washington State, giving a very good answer to a question he received about Building 7 when he was a guest on Washington Journal last week, saying the questions about this issue have merit, that the issue is worthy of investigating, should be investigated, the sooner the better, in his opinion. And it is the congressman's very good response that is going to be the centerpiece of tonight's interview with Wayne Coste, Dave Slesinger, and John O'Malley. These three great individuals are members of AE 9/11 Truth's Congressional Outreach Team, and in this interview tonight that I'm going to be playing for you, they talk about their own reactions to that response and about reaching out to Congress in general and how this really reflects a changing tide in the government and public's response to this issue, to the growth of awareness and the ease now that more people feel in speaking out. So this is a really good interview. These guys are very well spoken. You're going to want to listen to this one. Very great discussion that we have. So I'll be playing that for you in just a minute or two. I haven't really afforded myself much time for an introduction tonight, so I'm kind of hurrying through the news for this week. Also mentioned in the interview is this clip I'm going to play for you. It is a member of the Canadian Parliament, his last name is Bezan, condemning the Rethink 9/11 campaign during Richard Gage's tour through Canada that's going on right now as we speak.
Mr. Speaker, we all remember the NDP leader's suspicions when he doubted that the pictures proving Osama bin Laden's death existed. He was very clear on that. I don't think from what I've heard that these pictures exist, he said during an appearance on Power and Politics. However, his party soldiers on with the NDP's legacy of adhering to conspiracy theories. The member for Halifax and deputy leader of the NDP is championing the Truther cause on her website, promoting a 9/11 Truth national tour with Richard Gage. He's advertised as coming to Halifax to share his wealth of knowledge on what actually happened on September 11, 2001. What is that truth the member of Halifax is advertising? That the World Trade Center towers were brought down by internal demolition? In other words, it was an inside job by the U.S. government? Mr. Speaker, this tour is shameful and it's disrespectful to the victims of 9/11.
You heard it there, Canadian MP James Bezan, not very happy, condemning the Rethink 9/11 campaign. So we discussed that along with U.S. Congressional Outreach in the interview I'm about to play. Before I do play that, though, we're going to do what we do every week. We're going to take 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families and all the people who died in the wars that followed 9/11. We're going to do that starting now. And that is 10 seconds.
Okay, I am joined by three members of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth's Congressional Outreach Team. First, we have Wayne Coste. He's the head of it. He's an electrical engineer, and he's been on the show a number of times to talk about all the great outreach that he's done with so many various groups, including his protest of Netroots Nation when it excluded AE 9/11 Truth from its conference. Welcome back, Wayne.
Thanks for having me on.
And we also have Dave Slesinger. Dave is a longtime activist for various causes. He's going to be in the Activist Hall of Fame, I think, someday. He's the head of the public outreach team for AE 9/11 Truth, and he was on the show previously to discuss nonviolent resistance. Welcome back, Dave.
Great to be here.
And we have John O'Malley. John used to work at the Pentagon and within other government agencies. He's now a volunteer with AE 9/11 Truth, and he's the guy that you hear calling Representative McDermott in that clip I played in the intro. Welcome back, John.
Thank you.
Now, what we're going to do, just for our guests here, we're going to play that clip one more time. It's about a minute long of Jim McDermott responding on C-SPAN, and then we're going to get each of our guests' reactions to it.
I'm going to buy a policy. I'd be better off to have protection.
Let's get to phone calls.
Okay.
John is up first. Silver Spring, Maryland, Republican caller. Hi, John.
On 9/11, no plane struck the third tower, Building 7, but it came down in free fall acceleration for 105 feet and 6.5 seconds, which is impossible unless some type of explosives were used. How long do members of Congress think they can dismiss this issue and pretend that the government story of what happened to Building 7 on 9/11 is credible?
Congressman?
Well, I was expecting a healthcare question.
Yes.
There certainly are questions that I think would merit further investigation. I've seen some of the tapes, some of the videos that have been done of that, and I think there are some legitimate questions. Right now, nobody's willing to look at that kind of stuff because they're worried about future terrorism, not what went on before. And I really think one day we will have a further examination of that issue. I think the sooner the better, but that's just my personal view.
Steve, in North Carolina.
All right. So for initial reactions, we're going to start with you, Wayne. What is your initial reaction to that?
Well, of all the responses that we've heard from people who've been called on Washington Journal's program, this one was one of the most positive ones that we've received. First of all, he says that there certainly are questions that I think would merit further investigation. That is one of the stronger responses that we've heard. He said he's seen some of the tapes, which many of the people that have been have answered these questions on Washington Journal are feigned not knowing anything about it, or in fact they don't know anything about it. And he says that they're legitimate questions, and those are really important statements. And he thinks that one day we'll have a further investigation into the issue. So these are all really very positive statements from a representative who I think has been reelected 13 or so times in the from the state of Washington.
Dave, what's your reaction to that?
Well, I spoke to a fellow named Bert Sachs, who's a constituent of McDermott, who I met a few years ago, who is a supporter of ours. And he did assure me that McDermott has seen Solving the Mystery of WTC-7. He met McDermott and became friends with him when both of them went to the Middle East for a peace mission. He says that he does not think McDermott is willing to go much further than what he just did go, but he does believe he's seen Solving the Mystery.
Interesting.
It's not he believes it. I assume he showed it to him. He's certain that McDermott has seen that video.
Right. Okay. So you're saying that he knows for a fact that McDermott saw the Solving the Mystery video.
Correct. That is correct.
Okay. All right, so that's part of what woke him up. Now, and John, you're the one who made the call there. What do you think of that response?
Well, if you look at some of the poll numbers, depending upon how you ask the question, roughly 1/3 of America, either they believe it was an inside job, or they believe that we were lied to, or they believe in some way the official story is wrong. Now that's about 100 million people. And it seems that more and more people are figuring this out all the time. It's kind of like walking through a one-way door. You can never go back. So what he said may be a reflection of this underlying unrest that's in the population that is not reflected in the big media, but it's starting to kind of break through. That's just my thoughts on it.
Do you think that it reflects a changing political reality that these congressmen have to deal with now, that more people are waking up to this and that they have to start adjusting, having some position one way or another to it?
Well, one thing about running for Congress or any political office, you have to go to events where you meet people. And with the House, they have to run every 2 years. And right now, this summer, they're going to be starting to meet people who walk up to them and say, what about Building 7? So it kind of puts them in a little bit of a difficult position. But one thing I think that makes a difference is now that we get farther and farther away from 9/11, it is still horrifying, but it's not as horrifying as it used to be because it's going into history. So we seem to be better able to examine it with fresh eyes. So I'm actually fairly optimistic because truth has a force of its own, and in spite of the well-funded disinformation campaign, eventually the truth will come out, just like it did with the murder of John Kennedy and the Gulf of Tonkin.
Right. And I want to get your guys' view on this. And I'm not a complete historian of the truth movement. I don't know everything that's been done. But as far as I know, I think that's the first time that we've ever had a U.S. congressman say on such a public forum that we have a point. I'm not talking about private conversations that somebody may have had that the congressman knows they're not going to be recorded on and they can deny later. I'm talking about in front of the millions of viewers that watch this program every morning. I think it's very significant, if not even historical, in the sense that we have a U.S. congressman saying openly, right, and you can't get any more public forum than national television, that, these questions do have merit, it does warrant further investigation, and the sooner the better, in his opinion. Now, Wayne, I want to get your idea on that. What is the significance of this, in your view? Do you think that this is a game changer for the movement? Do you think it's going to have any effect at all or not?
Well, the question of what's going to be a game changer, it's probably not. We've seen an evolution. Of people being willing to talk about this. We had some other callers and responses on C-SPAN. I think it's Representative Loretta Sanchez, I think, was another one who was, really kind of hinting around. I think Margie Kaptur from Ohio was also supportive, and there are a number of them. And so the question of what is a game changer is kind of hard to see at this stage as the history is unfolding. So I think it's a very positive occurrence, and I'm really glad that the representative was able to respond as he did. I have some other things I can talk about, some prior correspondence with him, but we can touch on that a little bit later.
Right, we'll get back to that. I want to get Dave and John's opinion on that, and on what's the significance of this. Does anything change, you think, after this admission that basically we have a point on national television, or do you see it as Wayne as just kind of like the natural progression of how things have been going as we wake up more people and speak more publicly about it? Dave?
Well, you've heard the old saying, 3 times a charm. So, in general, the elected officials in any legislature prefer to come forward in a group. I don't think 3 is enough yet, but it's getting up there. I mean, it implies that, if we continue at this for another 6 months, we will likely have a half a dozen out there who will have shown themselves to be sympathetic, even though they don't admit to being willing to help. I'm also, I have to say, encouraged that after I was on a couple weeks ago with DeGette asking her a question, which she got away with pretending she had been helpful, our representative, who was our constituent, Fran Schur, did talk to her directly, and what we're looking for there is Democratic Party to be willing to have a person of scientific substance, who's a staffer in D.C., meet with one of our engineers, probably Wayne. And so, I mean, they may still avoid that, but she told Fran directly that she will arrange this. So, I mean, basically, at some point, we need to have, it may have to be a dozen people come forward and say we want an investigation. And frankly, I would say they should do it even if they don't think the bill can pass.
I agree with you. I think it's just common sense, and I think it sends a strong statement just to put it out there, and it normalizes the issue. I mean, one good thing about the people calling into C-SPAN so many times, so every day, so often, is that it normalizes the issue. It doesn't become as taboo because it's being talked about every single day. So when you do that, it's not something that is so scary. People don't have to quiet their voices so much. It's right out in the open, and regardless of how you feel about the issue, regardless of whether or not you want to cling to the official story or open your eyes and actually look at the evidence, saying Building 7 is not a big deal. And even people who would not even have known about Building 7 now know about it. It's become very what's the word I'm looking for? Synonymous with 9/11, whereas in the past people would have said building what? Now people are immediately know it's related to 9/11, and they know the issue with Building 7. They immediately think controlled demolition, even if they don't want to look at the evidence, even if they don't agree with it. They already know. You bring up Building 7, you think controlled demolition. I think that is a remarkable thing. John, what do you think about the significance of it? Do you think this is going to change anything? Do you think congressmen are going to be more open about speaking about it now that one of them has said we have a point on TV?
Well, I kind of look at it as the tide coming in. Every particle of water has force, and all the water together. I see a tide rising, and what he said may just be a symptom of the tide rising. I guess because I'm old enough to have lived through the JFK thing, I see so many similarities to that. It almost makes you think it was the same organization involved in both. When Garrison, who was the Louisiana prosecutor, first mentioned the possibility of LBJ being involved, people were absolutely aghast that anyone could even mention such a thing. But after a few years, it became an accepted belief. And then the thing that really turned the tide was the Oliver Stone JFK movie. That forced Congress to do what they did not want to do. So it's hard to say. The thing about, JFK was just one guy and maybe 50 or 100 witnesses. But this thing was, 3,000 Americans followed by a war on terror that is now looking like a war against us. So people are getting, riled up that they see that this was an initial war. This was an initial volley in a war that is really against the American people. So that's a big deal. So time will tell, but I think as more and more people get involved incrementally, eventually it'll become a force that is too great for them to ignore. But it's happening slowly but surely. So I guess we'll have to find out.
So what I'm getting, the sentiment I'm hearing from all of you is that this is just a natural progression of what's happening. Or maybe I don't even know if you can say natural because it's the effort of a lot of people that are making it happen, but that this is not just something that like a fork in the road that changes the entire direction of it. Basically, this is where the movement has been pushing America, and this is just a stop in that direction. That's what I'm hearing. Now, when the video went up, it went up on YouTube, it went up on the AE Facebook page. There were people very excited about it, but there was also some criticism of the video too, and some of the comments. Some folks claiming that the congressman's answer was a bit muted, and that he admits we have a point, and he thinks that we should have investigation. Excuse me, but that's just his personal view. And so if he agrees with us and agrees that there could be something wrong with it, these people are saying, why is he not out doing his job and pushing for that? We have folks, too, criticizing that he didn't go far enough, that he didn't come out and just declare it a false flag and America's in trouble. Now, I've got my own opinions on that, but I'm more interested in hearing your guys's. What do you think about those criticisms? We'll start with Wayne.
Well, we all would like not just the whole loaf, but we'd like to have the bakery too. Many of us have been at this for quite a long time, trying to bring the truth of what actually happened on 9/11 to the fore. And it's been a really slow slog. And so when we come across any member of Congress who moves towards the greater discussion of it, we're all excited, and we wish he would go further. I agree with what David had said a little while ago, is that we probably need many more people to step forward and say positive things before we can expect to before we can expect any kind of legislation or anything cohesive to be introduced into the U.S. Congress. Now, one of the alternative strategies, and I'm going to go a little off topic here a little bit, is we have opportunities, of course, to have our state legislatures speak up, because in fact it's my understanding the senators kind of report, so to speak, to the state legislatures, and we can have our state legislators who are much closer to us than the federal representatives and senators introduce legislation directing the senator to respond. And we may get some of those introduced into committee, and that might be a good thing. But that's one of the approaches that we're trying to refine as we go forward. And in response to that, you may end up with some more movement in Washington, in the U.S. Congress there. So I guess I think we have to wait for more people to step up before we can expect much more.
Dave, what do you think about the criticisms they listed before about it being not strong enough, about him not going far enough with what he said, and not doing enough if he really believes that and agrees with us?
I'm so pleased you asked me that question. As the three of you know, You cannot find anybody in the truth movement who is a very, very dedicated truther who is more critical of the culture of our own movement than me. And I'm going to say that most of the people who agree with us and have had the courage to look at the evidence are so terrible at common sense politics that even though if we fail, the main reason will be that the people who did it are incredibly rich and powerful. But the second main reason we'll fail is because the vast majority of people who agree with us are totally new to politics, have no common sense when they talk in terms of politics. Yes, of course, I wish that, I wish the congressman had made a stronger statement. What worries me is that most of the people who agree with us are barely capable of having a civil conversation about this issue with anybody. People need to learn how to communicate.
Yeah, and I actually I wanted to raise a point on that. However, I'm going to wait for the next question because my point's going to be in that question. But you raised a really good point with what you said, Dave. So we're going to get back to that in just a moment. But I want to hear what John has to say on this. On that criticism that I listed before, not being strong enough and that he doesn't go far enough with his actions. If he really thinks we have a point.
Well, I guess I have two things. The first is just as a regular guy, if we have a real democracy where politicians should be able to speak their mind without being afraid that some secret organization is going to destroy them, then why can't they just say what they think? I think it's frustrating when people who are running our country are afraid to state the obvious. Now, point number two, and this is where I actually was planning to call Dave and ask him for his advice. I am a political novice. I've never done anything in politics ever, so I have no background, and now I'm going to be on the ballot for next November. So I don't want to take Dave's time now, but whenever is possible, I want to talk to Dave to, help get myself educated, because I know Dave has been involved in politics for a long time. So I guess, we're in a situation where political novices like me, we have to learn about politics. And I've been trying to do that recently, and let me tell you, I have a long way to go. So I think Dave's point is something we really have to pay attention to, because the issue that we are dealing with, really, it's a public relations issue. And those of us who have backgrounds in science and technology may not be very good when it comes to doing a public relations or a political campaign, because we have personality types that are different. And I think I'm finding out right now that my personality characteristics are very, very different from the personality characteristics of a successful politician. So that's something I have to work on. So I'm glad we have Dave that we can talk to about this stuff.
Now, and just for our audience, you say you're on the ballot. What are you running for, John?
County Council and the Republican Central Committee, those two things.
Okay.
And I want to Dave
in a very Democratic county.
Oh, yes, yeah. Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about what Dave said, because this actually leads right into my next question I was going to ask is, how much should we sympathize with the positions that these congressmen are in? And, where do we draw the line with sympathizing and then letting them off too easy? Because where we are now has been because we're assertive and we've pushed. right? But then there's what Dave talks about in doing proper politics. Now, I'm not a political expert by any stretch of the imagination. I just try to look at things through other people's eyes and look at the shoes that, stand in the shoes that they're standing in, and understand the positions they're in. And that doesn't mean I let them off, because at some point you have to be bold and stand up for doing the right thing, especially in a matter as grave and important as this. However, I do appreciate that these congressmen right now find themselves, when they're confronted with this issue, in a position that I don't think any congressman has ever found themselves in before. Especially just with the gravity of 9/11 and the fact that the effects of it are still going on to this day. Just like our country, even though there's been events that people have questioned and thought there might have been some kind of inside complicity with, 9/11 is such that people started waking up to it in a short amount of time after it happened, thanks to the internet. And so we're still in the after effects of it. People are calling it out. People are waking up to other issues and raising questions about them as they happen. I mean, this is a very unique time in human history, thanks to the technology and people sharing information. And I think we're kind of writing the rule book as we go along. And so are these congressmen. And they're trying to figure out, how do you respond to this? They may even be awakened to this, but what's the precedent for something like this when you're in Congress, especially when being in Congress in many cases means going along to get along and not rocking the boat too much, except when it's strategically opportune for you to do so. So I guess I want to ask you guys, start with Wayne again, how much should we sympathize, how much should we push?
Well, I think that we should sympathize and try to figure out how to push. So it's not I don't see it as a kind of an either or. There are various ways to kind of push the ball forward. For example, the senator in my state, Senator Chris Murphy, was also asked a question on Washington Journal and refused to dignify the caller a response. I think that was his words, so I can sympathize with him to some extent. But not wanting to touch the issue, but how do you push? And in the case of Senator Murphy, since he's in my state, I sent a letter to he's a Democrat, so every member of the Democratic legislature, the Democratic members of the House, the Democratic members of the Senate, and said, "Hey, Chris Murphy won't answer these questions before we, and I wanted to make something so that they would know that they had to finish reading the letter so they could understand what the whole issue was, and trying to do some outreach. So that was one way of trying to push, and that effort is still kind of an ongoing one. But I think we can understand kind of where they're coming from, and then we have to figure out how to push the ball forward a little bit further. And we're still trying to do that with my senator, and we'll be trying to figure out how to do that with Representative McDermott also. Thanks.
Dave, I know you'll probably have a lot to say on this. How much do we sympathize? How much do we push?
Well, I agree with Wayne that there's not a problem. The issue of whether or not any given elected official is going to actually do anything useful is much, much more related to whether or not we do proper, normal grassroots organizing than whether or not we make an excellent argument to them when we talk to them. You cannot reasonably ask an elected official to be concerned with the so-called truth as you and I see it. They are concerned about the truth as their constituents see it and as their financial supporters see it. So they are concerned about the truth, just they're not concerned about their own formulation of the truth. So I do need also to say that John Paul is masterful at talking to people and doesn't need advice from me. You certainly are not going to win as a Republican in the Montgomery County, Maryland. But if you actually can get on stage, when you get on stage, say what you want, and I know you'll be nice about it, so I'm sure it'll be excellent. I would like to relate a story from my own experience when I lived in Maryland. I went to a dinner at the MIT Club of D.C. I'm an MIT grad, and at this dinner, the chairman of the MIT board was there. He is a former CEO of Citibank, a quite accomplished individual. And I handed him a packet as he left, and I said, I cannot ask you to make any public statements about this matter. I'm just asking you to look into it. If you were to make any public statements, it would hurt MIT with elected officials, and of course you can't do that. But because of the fact that little 15-year-olds throughout the world are going to know through the rest of history that the intellectuals in the United States lack integrity, and when this issue breaks, and it will break, I'm hoping you can be aware of this so that MIT can get out in front and be less embarrassed than it would otherwise. And that's really, in my opinion, how to talk to anybody of substance, whether they be an elected official or just an accomplished person who you happen to know. They are not going to be willing to upset powerful people that they know. But that doesn't mean they can't look at the evidence. And the evidence is striking. It's ninth grade science. It's ninth grade science. The top of a building cannot crush the bottom of a building without slowing down. We don't even have to know how many seconds the buildings took to come down. All we need to do is to look at the line of destruction as it comes down. If it's not slowing down, that is the ball game. We don't need one more piece of evidence. The cold concrete and steel underneath where the planes hit they held up that building for decades. They didn't provide one bit of resistance. Of course they would have, unless they were exploded. That is the ball game. That's how simple it is.
John, what do you say? How much should we sympathize? How much should we push?
Well, I guess I would approach the question one way, and what Dave said is right. I'm not going to be on the county council, but I might win Republican Central Committee. But one way I would look at it is those of us who come from technical backgrounds, like architects and engineers, etc., we tend to be very logical. We tend to see the world, it's either up or down, it's either fixed or it's broken, and if it's broken, there's like 1, 2, 3 ways to fix it. That's a different type of personality type, a different mindset than maybe you have in politics, where in politics, people tend to look at things, is it going to help me or hurt me? They tend to be more nuanced. They tend to have the ability to kind of talk around a subject without mentioning it. They will try to make you believe something without actually saying it. It seems to be a different personality type, and those of us from technical backgrounds may inherently have a difficult time understanding the political mind, and that may be an important thing that we have to address. I'm not sure if I'm being very eloquent about this. I would be interested in what Dave thinks about that.
Well, and my own personal view on this, I guess it's kind of an instinctive thing. It depends on the energy or the spirit of the person that I'm talking to, because again, all these congressmen are just people, and we all know that the types, the folks who won't even hear this, who think it's just a joke from the very start, the instant non-starter. Those type I tend to push a little bit more with. However, if it's somebody who basically just generally I like their personality, if they seem just kind of open, even if they're immediately thinking, like a lot of us probably did in the very beginning, that this is an instant non-starter, that they bought the propaganda, that the truthers are just these kooks, who are more polite, who are more willing and open to at least look at the evidence, to listen to you, to give you their attention. Obviously I can sympathize with them more, and then as they start to give these good answers, like we're hearing from people like Marcy Kaptur, Jim McDermott, and all the others who have given somewhat positive responses, then that opens up that circle, and I can empathize with them a little bit more, because it does take a lot of courage to speak out when you're a minnow surrounded by sharks. That's kind of the way I see it, because you're they're aware of what the political climate is. This is a very tough issue. I don't think there's been a tougher issue in many years in this country. So that's where I stand on that. Now, we were talking about how people don't know how to organize in many cases, don't know how to work the political game and do what you need to do to get this movement pushed to the forefront. Now, we have a rich history in this country of political activism for other issues and great things that have taken place. I always cite the abolitionist movement. That took many decades for that whole issue to get settled, but I think that there's some parallels between 9/11 Truth and the abolitionists. I did a whole show on that a year or two ago. What should our supporters be doing with responses to C-SPAN? What should they be doing with just in general to reach out to their local politicians, their congressmen, state senators? How do you go about doing that? What's your advice? We're going to start with Wayne.
Well, basically, first, there are many questions you've just asked, and what is, how should you approach your members of Congress? And we just simply suggest that, in fact, you do, and to bring the credible evidence that architects and engineers, scientists for 9/11 Truth, and others have compiled, and make sure that not just the member of Congress, but their staffs are aware of the evidence. And it's really important to have laid that groundwork. Now, one of the things that we have, I have in my files here is a letter written to Representative Jim McDermott from D. Christian Hassel, director of the FBI Crime Laboratory, and he's responding to a question that Representative McDermott had forwarded to the FBI. In which the questions were related to the debris and the forensic evidence that was there, and for example, the FBI, this letter basically was sent to McDermott, and it said, "We reviewed the referenced article and concluded that the results from the analysis of the dust samples in no way serves as an indicator that thermite was present in the post-collapse debris." We've proven that to be wrong. The peer-reviewed papers have survived. So again, the whole point is you want to be able to bring credible evidence, and you ask a member of Congress to do something relatively simple. And I expect that what we'll be doing in response to these comments by Representative McDermott and by others is to ask constituents to contact the representative, and in this case here, thank him for being as forthright as he could, and suggest that there are additional steps that he could maybe think about how we could pursue them. So that's how I see us using this, and what other people can do. It's really important to have these correspondence with their members of Congress, and then sending us an archive or a letter, a copy of the letter and the correspondence, no matter how satisfying or unsatisfying it is good. It's good to have a library of these correspondences. So I guess that's all for now. Thanks.
Right, and I wanted to stress that to the audience and highlight what you just said. Folks, any kind of correspondence you have with your congressman, even if it's a really bad one, even if it's like a letter like I got from Richard Hanna's office that doesn't even address what you came there to talk about, that talks about how he's fighting for the people of Central New York and then lists a whole litany of different talking points on various issues, none of them about 9/11. Even if it's that, you should let AE 9/11 Truth know so that we know what's happening, and that helps in our work, and we can even talk to you and give you advice on how to further pursue it if you would like to. I want to get to Dave now, because Dave, this is a big point for you. You're talking to the Truth Movement. What do we do better? I mean, how do we organize? If you were leading it, you're the general, what should people be doing and better, and what they should try to reach out to Congress, local politicians, state officials to get this issue into their minds and get them to do something about it?
You only need to be reaching out to Congress if that's something you feel comfortable with. What's much more important is doing normal grassroots organizing where you live. I don't mind you contacting all the people you know around the country, which doesn't affect your rep. But in general, most people in the Truth Movement dislike organizing. They prefer research, as if they, as an individual, are going to get to the bottom of all this. They pride themselves in how many thousands of hours they have spent researching the matter. The reality is that the statement I made earlier is all you need. You don't need to do research. I mean, if you'd like to do research, I'm glad you do, but it's much more important to do outreach. We approved our case a long time ago, and certainly our most recent videos are overwhelming on this front. You need to do organizing. The vast majority of people who are willing to do outreach and organizing absolutely refuse to do it in a group. This is a huge weakness for the movement. You need to be in touch with AE or whatever local group exists. There are a lot of really good local groups. And you need to have us help situate you in some fashion to do organizing. And, I think the reason why people don't, I think there are two reasons. The main reason is that most people are paranoid. They're afraid the government's going to hurt them. And, of course, the government can hurt you. But please note, Richard Gage, AIA, our founder, is not even on the no-fly list. We don't point fingers. Nobody has reason to fear us. We do public education. It's totally absurd to infiltrate a group which only does public education. So you need to not be paranoid, or you should admit that you're not going to be willing to help. I have a list of 12 different things that people can do as local organizers. I am the team leader for the action groups, which is our grassroots organizing. Just go to the AE 9/11 Truth website and look for our contact information and call up and leave your phone number, and I will get back to you and help situate you in some fashion. If you're not willing to do outreach, we are going to lose.
Now, Dave, the 12 different things, do you have that posted on the internet somewhere?
I give it to people who decide they want to be local contacts. I mean, maybe they'll list it somewhere, but, really simple things like buying our investigator broadsheet, and when you're driving around, you see a coffee shop, go in and give it to the people who are sitting there one at a time. Don't put a stack because somebody's going to throw it out. I mean, that's something really simple that people can do. Probably the best thing that any given person can do in terms of your time is to get our videos on your local cable access. That's not PBS, that's cable access, like where your city council meetings are. We have a team that works on that. We haven't done nearly as well as I would like, but we do know what we're doing. Please be in touch with me. I will set you up. let me compare a situation. A fellow joined that team in the beginning who had gone to a talk at a library in Houston, the fifth largest city in the United States. There were 60 people at the talk. He was very excited and wanted to help. I assure you that every local cable access station, even if it's only broadcasting in the middle of the night, our videos, is reaching more than 60 people. Not only that, those 60 people are unaware of what we are saying. And if you go to a talk, 90% of the people are already familiar with the evidence. Come help us with cable access.
John, what do you have to say about all this? What should people be doing better to organize, reach out to congressmen? What advice would you give them?
Well, the average person like me, if you were to ask me to write down a list of what it means to do grassroots organizing, I really would not have much of a clue because it's something I've never done. So any way that we could get Dave's expertise out to more people would be helpful. Now, one mistake I think a lot of people make is they preach to the choir, and in order to make converts, you have to preach to the heathen. You have to go out to where people will not want to believe you. So like I've, got involved with the local Republican Party because some of them do not think that their president could ever have done such a thing. One thing people can do is, because election season is coming up, members of Congress are going to be where you can walk up to them and talk to them. They're going to be at factories and church picnics and this and that. And if enough of us continue to just walk up to these members of Congress and just talk to them and present a case and talk to their staffers, and do it in a civilized way. One thing I've tried, I went down to CPAC and I spent a few days down there. Is if you walk up to one of these people, and they tend to be very needy people. If you walk up to them and just give them a compliment, like they're a very good speaker or whatever, I mean, they will talk to you for a half hour, and you can present them the evidence. And as long as you do not appear to be crazy, I think you can be well received. But it's important to dress reasonably well and to behave professional and civilized. And rather than give them conclusions, give them the evidence, because when you walk up to them with conclusions, well, some of them will just dismiss you as some crazy nut. But when you present them the evidence, they're more likely to be more receptive. And if more and more people continue to do this over and over again, I think eventually it's got to get through. I mean, that's what I think.
Right, and you took the words right out of my own mouth. I was going to put that on as a little cherry on top to all you guys' great statements, but that's a very important thing, folks, is to dress like you're going on a job interview, all right? That means get a haircut. If you're going to meet a congressman, get a haircut the night before, wear a tie or a nice dress if you're a woman, and, I mean, this is important. I've had people tell me stories about how they wanted to try to get into some event where George H.W. Bush was speaking, but oh my God, they didn't let me in for some reason. Maybe it's because I was wearing a Death to the New World Order T-shirt. They didn't let me in. I mean, well, what do you expect? I mean, this is kind of the game that needs to be played here, is that you want to come off as professional and that you know what you're talking about and that you're someone who needs to be listened to. And regardless of how you feel about the situation, we've talked about the difference between a problem and a situation before on this show. The situation is that someone's going to listen to you more if you present yourself as professional. And that's just the way it is. So that's my advice to add on to that. Now, in the last few minutes of the show, I just want to quickly, very fast, get you guys' opinion on a different subject. James Bezan condemning AE 9/11 Truth, Richard Gage, Rethink 9/11, up there on the floor of Parliament. I'm playing the clip in the intro of the show for the audience, so I've already played that to the listening audience, and you guys heard it before we started recording today. Just really quick, starting with Wayne, what are your reactions to that?
Well, my reaction is, finally, Richard Gage's name has been mentioned in the Canadian Parliament, and to me that's a good thing. There's more and more. There's more defensiveness in his statements, and if you're trying to do what most politicians do, and that's keep absolute silence, this is a good thing for the issue to be raised in such a public forum, even if it's not very favorable. The fact that it has been raised gets a lot of people to say, "What's this all about?" Instead of not having a clue about it. So I think that that was really good. But I do have one comment to Dave's previous statement. I think it's you can if you want to know how to do organizing, you can go to Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth website, 8911truth.org, and go to the Take Action tab, and then from there you can go see what you can do if you have 5 minutes or if you have an hour or more time. And those are very effective ways of doing outreach. So that's all. Thanks.
Dave, what's your reaction to the condemnation of Rethink 9/11 on the floor of Canadian Parliament?
Yes, exact same as Wayne. It's good that he mentioned it. It's almost like we were in entertainment and just spelled my name right. It's our team leader for presentations, Dan Noel, takes the position that the people who cover up the discussion of this issue are more to blame than the perpetrators. I think there's some merit to that.
John, what's your reaction to Bezan condemning Rethink 9/11?
Well, I think I would follow on what Dave said that guy said. Now, I don't know that much about black operations, but from what I've heard, in a black operation, like 90% will go to the cover-up, and that's what's happening here. Now, as to this Canadian guy, the question that I have is, does he believe what I used to believe? Because I used to believe that the 9/11 truthers must be crazy. So he may be like that. He may be an honest man who's simply wrong. So we don't know who he is, but like what they say, any publicity is good publicity. So the people who are criticizing us are actually better than the people who are trying to censor any mention of 9/11 or Building 7 in the media.
And we're going to have to end it there, but it reminds me of a statement I heard an activist make at one point in my last couple of years. Not evil, just wrong. It's great words to end it on. Guys, thank you for coming on 9/11 Freefall.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Remember, you can hear this program every Thursday night on No Lies Radio at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. You can also download the show by going to 911freefall.com. This is Andy Steele saying have a great week and good luck.